Okay. So, hey everyone. This is AllERCDevs Session 2, Season 2, Episode 3. And as usual, brief introduction of what we are trying to do here. We are trying to bring a community of all ERC builders, authors, adopters together, because standardization only matters if you adopt them, right? So a lot of times we see this gap between authors who spend a lot of time thinking about what standards should look like, and then also implementation being done, but the feedback is not coming back to the implementer. So this is the place. And today, I think we're very happy to have our good friend, Nick Dan, who also have served a lot of multiple times as a peer reviewer, to hop on and introduce what he is having fun building right now, which is debug working group. I think it's especially interesting in the light of like EIP 3074, a bunch of things that happens to ERC 1271. Like increasingly, we're seeing wallets signing contract complexity function calls without like user knowing what's going on, without even developers knowing what's going on. So the debuggability is core to this. So that's one thing why we want, I want to invite Nick Dan to present to this group of audience. On the other hand, I think it's ERC or EIP, actually wallet call. I don't know how should we categorize them, but 5792 is an important standard to standardize how wallet RPCs are handled. And I think Juan is going to be here to talk about it, even though I'm not seeing. So I'll be pinging him. He said he's going to be run over a little bit, but I think we can get started. I think one lesson we learned last time was that 5 minutes intro, 5 minutes QA is usually run over. So we give, this time we reduce one item. We give each item 10 minutes for the presentation and then 5 minutes for QA. And hopefully we'll still have some deeper conversation afterwards. And just by the way, in addition to Nick Dan, Nick and Juan, who is presenting, we also have a great crowd of peer reviewers or friends, William Entrican, Jack Xu, author of ERC 60666, Pedro, authors of many, founder of Wallet Connect, Graham, Unruggable Labs founder, Rick Mall, my respect go to ether.js. Vectorize, he done a lot of things I respect, Saladi, and he's working on dual nature and dual nature tokens. I think I introduced everyone. Okay, that's a great 5 minutes. All right, going to Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. Thanks for continuing to organize these also. Really important work. So I didn't prepare slides, but I did prepare HackMD. So
I love HackMD.
Yeah.
Everyone here loves HackMD.
Yeah, just nice to have a visual aid. All right, let me make sure this shares. All right, you should be able to see that. No, we might have to make notes as we go. Cool. So, hi everyone. I'm Nick. I'm working on ethdebug for the Ethereum Foundation right now, and I'm here to talk about what that means. Some of you may know me from my past work. I was lead for Truffle for a number of years. Notably, I architected Truffle Debugger and Truffle Codec, the accompanying decoding library. And in that time, Truffle Debugger was a giant pain in the butt. And it would continue to be a pain in the butt, except no longer exists. But anyone that works on a debugger for an EVM language today understands the pain of like understanding how Solidity puts strings in storage, how it doesn't have a consistent order between like most significant first, or big endian versus little endian. It's just a big mess. And so building a good debugger or good debugging tools requires understanding intimately the details of the language, right? Like you have to understand Solidity inside and out, not just the like externally documented and guaranteed interfaces that the language provides. Like there are internals that are extremely relevant to debugging. And you see this when everything breaks with your debugger when you turn on the optimizer. And so on traditional computing platforms, this problem is largely solved by a type of data format called a debugging data format. Basically, it's information that the compiler can produce at compile time that pairs with the runtime machine state. So it's like you look at the machine, you look at this debugging data format output, and you can effectively translate from the machine back to the high level language. So you see opcodes, you like see the machine step instruction by instruction, and you have a way of translating each of those instructions back to what they mean in terms of like programmer intent. Like this is a variable, this is a function call, all the sort of things that you would expect, being, technically inclined, but not writing assembly. And so the challenge has been, how do we build a data format that is suited for EVM languages with the EVM's particular constraints, like the word size being enormous, the fact that code has money also is a weird one, and just all various quirks that make smart contract computing a new paradigm. So this is an ongoing work in progress. I won't say half done, but maybe half done with the initial drafts of the schemas. But there's a long road ahead for this work. So I'm joining today mostly to kind of present the problem space, to talk about where things are right now and kind of the current plan as we understand it. So in my view, I think by the end, like when ethdebug is a completed draft, we'll have about these 5 schemas, and I'll go over them. At the top level, we'll need an instruction schema, right? Like something that can annotate individual instructions with these semantic details, right? Like at this instruction, we are... Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let me do the thing where I make it everybody and signed in, although... sure. Cool. Yep. So I was talking about instruction schema is like the top level. The compiler should output the bytecode. The bytecode is a bunch of instructions encoded in binary, one after the next, with some data in between. The compiler should provide like a JSON format that is a big ol' array annotating individual instructions. Maybe it's a sparse array, and annotating the like relevant instructions, right? Maybe not every instruction needs an annotation, but each instruction annotation would contain one or more operations, which would be the actual semantic things that you recognize, like a function call begins, a variable is declared as a type, a variable gets allocated, you've entered a new source range is a big one, like, because if you're in a debugger, you want to step line by line. Then from there, we need to describe things. So the 2 main things we must describe are locations in the machine, right? Like data locations within the machine. And that's the job of this pointer schema, which says it's the top of the stack, or it's the top of the stack tells you the start of the memory offset, and you should read that for 32 bytes, right? And I'll get into these in 4 minutes. I'm going to rush through. And then we have a type schema, which describes data types like uint, array of uint, mapping from address to array of uint, that sort of thing. And then just like we need probably just another schema just to define what an ID is for a source, and AST formats and kind of externals. So working with this plan where we are right now, I'm mostly the only person really heads down on this work. We have a counterpart on the Solidity team doing implementation stuff, but since this is still early going, it's a lot of me just writing a lot of JSON schemas. So far what I have done is I've taken a bottom-up approach. I have a pointer and a draft schema, and I'm currently working on the operation schema, and it's just a whole bunch of, Victor described this work as fun. Depends if you find it fun to have alternating periods of brain busting challenge followed by tedium. I like it. Anyway, let me just show you quickly. I'll show you the type schema first. So yeah, FDebug format type is a schema. It defines how to write data types as JSON. For instance, like this. For not instance, like that, right? And you can see other examples. Here's just a plain address. Here's a mapping. Here's how I have it right now. So it's a mapping. It contains a key type and a value type. Structs contain a list of types, by name, member names. You can see all these types are here. It's probably not complete, but yeah, hopefully as a draft, it at least can solicit some discussion, and then we can make it better from there. But then we have the pointer schema, which the purpose of it is to point to bytes, and this is tricky, and I'll show you why it's tricky. I have a document here. Yeah, effectively, yeah, okay. It's tricky because of the novel techniques for organizing data that I was describing. Like, I should have had this. This one. I'll just put this in the chat as well. This was an early exploration into how solidity behaved, and you can see, like, if a string is smaller than word size, it fits into one storage slot, but a string that is larger than word size gets divided up. And so this is the sort of thing that we have to deal with. The compiler has to, at compile time, say, by the way, at this instruction, you can find the string here, and this is how you find it, right? And of course, in Solidity, it might be different than Viper, might be different than Phi, might be different than any other EVM language. You can't just say, oh, it's a string. No. What is Solidity's string? Like, give me the details, compiler. Like, so how do I approach this problem? Well, probably in the effort of time, I'll just go over some examples, right? Just a basic storage slot is easy. You say location storage, give it a slot. But when you start to get into more complex examples, like if you're describing a dynamically sized array, well, finding the array, you will have to look on the stack. So at some point, the compiler will have an instruction that is annotated saying the array start is at the top of the stack. From there, you know that there is the count of the array is encoded in memory, beginning at array start for the word size. And then we have a whole bunch of items in the array. And so you can kind of see the complexity that we have to deal with in this problem space. But I think, yeah, all right, here's the string example, right? Where depending on the length of the string, yeah, it's a mess. But this is the pointer schema. You can see I have a link at the bottom if you want to review this. I just hit my 10 minutes, so I'll just say, if you'd like to contribute, it'd be much appreciated. We meet every 2 weeks on Thursdays. I can get you an invite, or you could join our Matrix chat where I announce the calls usually about an hour before. But if you want, I can just send you a calendar invite. We have the GitHub repo, and then you can find here the links to the two schemas I just showed you. How's that for a whirlwind demonstration?
That's great, actually. I love this, Nick. I also want to bring this to the group the reason I bring you is that a lot of things seems to be related to how things can be understood, right? Like Pedro earlier today, the conversation they talk about to avoid user getting phished is important to be able to run like transaction simulation, right? Like if we cannot really understand what's going on inside of a function call. Let's say some function passes in string memory, and then within 32 bytes or outside of 32 bytes, it will be packed in a different way, and then the parser cannot understand it. You cannot show user what's going on there. It's just very hard for parser to kind of for simulator to kind of present a user readable thing. So I think I applaud to this effort laying the foundation. Not only you can participate and contribute, I think one way you can contribute is actually give them problems, give them requests, like feature requests, or what kind of things that would be useful in your case. So I'll pause here any feedback before we move on to the next? Any questions to Nick before we move on to the next topic?
Hi, Nick. Thanks for sharing. I really think this is more of a Solidity bug than an ETH debug. 99% of what you're talking about is not EVM. It's Solidity specific. Couple technical notes. When you're beating yourself up over how to encode strings from Solidity into a formal definition, I point you to an out that was taken in another similar standardization effort. When Microsoft, the bastard of standardization, bought off all of the countries to vote in the ISO for the Open Office XML file format, which competed with OpenOffice.org, if you remember that scam that they did where they bought Nigeria. Everybody in Africa, because each country's one vote, but the votes were cheaper in Africa, so they just paid all of Africa to vote for it. But there is a function in the specification called, do you know this function?
I know, but I kind of can guess.
It's called do line breaks like Microsoft Word 1995.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
And that is in the ISO spec that was passed by 180 countries. So don't be afraid of making a similarly named function with a similar amount of weight into it, because there's no value in specifying this any deeper. It can be fun, but you will get lost in the woods to no benefit. No benefit. You're going to have to say there's a Solidity string here, and we all know what that means. The first bit you read, then you got the size, all these things. There's nothing you can do. So don't beat yourself up. The most practical stuff like Victor said is going to be tracing transactions, stopping people from getting phished, and really just finding which storage addresses were touched. So just keeping the practical thing here is keeping the hashes and unhashing when we see that a specific storage location was touched. That is 80 to 90% of the value of any work that we do with debugging. Otherwise, all the stuff you showed was fun. I'm looking forward to touch some of it. There's another related project made by ETH, QuickNode, where they're watching the whole blockchain to see which addresses were touched. I think it really plays into that. And the last thing I wanted to note was Solidity is still not goddamn version 1. So everything you're doing is theoretically subject to change. Now, I've been on Solidity team fighting about some of these things, and it is effectively a version 1, but like even the fact that the storage locations are chosen the way that they are that's an implementation detail. So theoretically, the work you're doing is overbuild on Quicksand, because theoretically this is not API stable at this time. So one of my clauses is that we need to today switch from Solidity 0. something to 1.0 and treat this like an actual semver, because otherwise projects like yours really do not have a ground to stand on with a 0.x semver project. So I support you on that. I support the growth of Solidity, the switching from teenagers to adults in the room with the real semver and debugging tools, ASTs, mapping files as we call them in JavaScript world. But this is all great stuff, and I'm glad to see this graduate.
Yeah, thanks for your feedback, Will. Just a couple notes. Viper copied a lot of Solidity's storage allocation strategies. And in some cases, they switched the hash order, right? Like, Solidity does like p.k, the hash of p.k, and then Viper does it the other way, k.p. But yeah, I was originally going to take the approach of doing it's encoded like a Solidity string, right? And just leave it at that. But in the end, it actually turned out to be not so bad to describe these things. I mean, it requires a little bit of symbolic logic, right? You have to, but I think it's not too bad, right? Basically, my approach means that I think we just need a reference implementation, and then it's about as good as having.
Wait, hold on. Viper's K.P?
Whichever way Solidity is, Viper's the other way for mappings. Yeah.
That's vulnerable. That's vulnerable to attack on 3 levels plus. Solidity is not vulnerable, so Viper must be. Because h of x is y, and y can be chosen. Game over.
No, it's concatenate, right?
You cannot, right?
You concatenate. It's like so the mapping lives in a slot,
right?
But the individual mapping pairs live at that slot concatenated with the key,
and you hash it.
Right.
The problem is if it's a hash of a hash, you should not be able to choose the inside value. But if
it's not a hash of a hash, it's a hash of two things concatenated, right?
The key, right? The key of the hash, of the outer hash, you should not be able to choose the inside. All right. Well, you're thinking about it. I've said it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But that's dangerous if you hash it the wrong way.
I think if there's a vulnerability there, we should surface it to the Viper team. I don't like from PFK KFT. I couldn't figure it out. There's a.
It only matters if it's 3 levels. It's not a mapping. It's a mapping of a mapping is the thing that matters.
Interesting. I think you guys we should come up with a FEM thread, and then whoever it goes on, this would be a good outcome from today's talk. Yeah, Veterize just mentioned. Interesting.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I think we can leave it to a topic after Bumble Fudge presents. If there is a security issue, then we should surface this. How about that?
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick, and thanks, William, and everyone for listening. And then we have. Do you want me to address you as Bumble Fudge or Juan? Whichever do you prefer? So yeah, Juan. You can choose any ERC. You mentioned 3 that you can present. Anyone works. Yeah, just take it away. Thanks for presenting. I couldn't hear you. And your face is really small. Unless you want to keep private, that's fine too. But yeah, if you don't have to, if you don't want to.
There we go. So sorry about that. So yeah, I didn't prepare a presentation so much as I just wanted to like alert people and do basic Q&A. I mean, I'm not primary author on any of these 3. They're just 3 new EIPs that people have been kicking around for different they're kind of hard to understand in isolation. They're sort of like interlocking interlocking ERCs that do related things. So I think the let me see if I can pull them all up. I can't even get the notes. Could I ask someone to reshare the agenda notes? I think
yeah.
There they are.
Let me get the agenda list here, and so that people can read them themselves.
Thanks so much. Sorry, I was late because I was in another meeting. I was going to prepare before this meeting.
No worries.
So yeah, the three threads are all things that would be of interest to dApp developers. So people that are working on UX topics in dApps and working on ways to have recurring payments and paymaster sponsored payments. These are all sort of interlocking ways of doing that. 2 of them are specifically for 4337 wallets, obviously, the paymaster stuff. Another way of thinking of 7679 and 5792 allows batching of user ops, which is a sort of an unlock for 4337 wallets that wasn't standardizable enough for a dApp to be worth doing it in a way that works across implementations. Like a lot of 4337 implementation history so far has been really one SDK specific or one company specific. You integrate one SDK and only those 4337 wallets can do anything you want to do. So I think a good way of thinking of this is that some of the 4337 companies have been working together to get past that and just sort of standardize interfaces across their SDKs and put things on their roadmap to be able to all support common interfaces. So telling a DApp, hey, I'll accept your paymaster if you submit this kind of paymaster is something that a lot of dApps have been requesting. So that's one of them. And the that if you think of each of these as building blocks for how a dApp could support multiple different 4337 wallets, they make a lot more sense. So yeah, this is sort of a get the word out. If you clicked on one of these, didn't understand what was going on, discarded it, didn't think about it again, please reconsider if you're working on dApps, because they're all sort of building blocks of cool new user stories. Yeah, that's my spiel. That's my off the top of my head. But I was weirdly assuming people would have questions that me or maybe Pedro would be able to answer.
Pedro didn't anticipate he was gonna present, but it seems like he's being called up to the
Sorry.
stage.
I got a quick question. I've been so turned off on Ether gas station when I just opened the contract and I saw it had an owner and I just stopped it and I blacklisted denial listed the whole thing on my computer. I was like, all right, this is done, leave, gone. And I didn't even read 4337 because I assumed that they had made such an other fatal mistake. Should I unblacklist this?
You mean owner? In what sense do you mean have an owner?
Some of the infrastructure of Ethereum gas network or gas station network has an owner of the smart contract, which is obviously incompatible with a public good smart contract. So I just wrote off it's a great idea. I just wrote it off as corrupted from the beginning. Are we able to do this again with 4337, or is this actually a public good? Like, is it just, you know what I mean? We can't have upgradable, multiple party owned contracts in charge of everybody's transactions. It's just not compatible.
Okay, and so I guess would the 4337 analogy be the upgradability of entry points, or because
none of this should be upgradable.
Yeah, I think the entry point is not upgradable. I think every time there's a new version, there's like a semver. Like right now we're on entry point 0.7. Some contracts still support 0.6, and it's a simpleton for the whole chain. On each chain, there's a 0.6 simpleton, a 0.7 simpleton, and I think they're permissionless in the sense that, yeah, I actually, now that you mention it, I don't know what the governance is for who decides what 0.8 will be, but I don't think it isn't upgradable in that sense, like Francisco said in the chat.
Right. I mean, there should just be one of these, and then we should fire everybody because the work's. I mean, Ethereum itself should fire everybody because it should be done. But like, you just deploy this once, and there's no 1.2, 1.3. I gave him a hard time about Seaport. I'm like, Seaport is a very large public good. There should not be versioning or governance, or there is no upgrade. This is done. Like, this is, math. Math is, you don't redefine math. Math is solved. So for this kind of stuff, this is version 1, no version 1.1, because you're either going
compiles or math. This is ergonomics. I mean, this is.
But like, what happens is if you upgrade this by whatever process, that means that every other smart contract on the entire chain needs to go approve the smart contract. How do you do that? Does Bored Apes get redeployed, or do they make it upgradable, which is just an abomination? Like, first of all, it's illegal, and in Europe, upgradable contracts are illegal because you need to censor transactions. But aside from that, I'm assuming that you ignore the law in Europe and the rest of the world, where everything's upgradable contract is a complete joke. So we need to have a single.
I mean, you're contradicting yourself, because it's like either the contract is upgradable and you just keep the address and change the functionality, or you just make a new contract every time, which is what Uniswap does, what 4337 entry point is doing, what Seaport is doing. And I mean, you get the updated functionality, which ideally only off-chain components have to switch a parameter without an upgradable proxy, which a lot of people disagree with. So I feel like 4337's approach and all these other protocols I mentioned are better, even by your own arguments, which you're arguing against proxies. So I don't really understand what, like, this is not math. These are complex protocols that we want to evolve. And this is the best way to do that when we're talking about these sort of public goods superstructures.
So there is a singleton. So if I deploy a contract the real way, with locking up the keys, I can point to this one version, and that's the only paymaster that's going to work. They can't change the rules of the game. And if new features come out, then that doesn't affect me.
I need to check the exact details to answer that question, but I would assume that's the case. Yeah, the upgrades are done at the social layer is basically the idea.
Right.
Cool.
And yeah, the entry points are like that. The paymasters, there's actually like, once you get into the actual contracts, there's a million kinds of paymaster, which is part of what I find frustrating about 4337 is the so many terms are overdetermined and there's optionality. So a lot of people, when they say paymaster, they're really only thinking of the one kind they use, which is, pay the paymaster in USDC or USDT, and then it will abstract out the gas. And other people are thinking of off-chain paymasters, which are like service, Web2 API paymasters. And other people are thinking of a blind paymaster, which is like a paymaster that just pays the gas no matter what, for whatever sender it's allow listed. And those three kinds of paymaster, all three are assumed to be upgradable, change over time. Someone needs to up the balance. Those are all moving parts. The paymaster is very much a moving part. And what this does, I think, is create more moving parts that abstract out the things that are too optional. All of these overdetermined, or all of these methods that have optional parameters and all of that get abstracted by this new these new interfaces that multiple implementations have said, yeah, we'll support this interface. This will, in some cases, it's less efficient. It uses a little more gas. It calls the same function twice, whatever, under the hood. But it's sort of worth it to have a common interface. And if you want to save gas, then you can go back to one SDK implementation. So I feel like this is a step forward for the many possibilities opened by 4337 to sort of be whittled back and have like a public option, like a useful more of the time option. That's how I'm conceiving of these. Maybe the people driving them or the people that work for these companies would disagree with my take. But anyways, that's sort of my gloss on like why anyone who comes to this call in particular might want to be paying attention to these. Sorry, that took all of 10 minutes.
That's great. William, are you? Do you want to like respond? Okay.
Just say thanks.
Yeah. And also, I think Pedro is here. I don't know if Pedro want to respond or this seems to be an interesting question. Seems like Pedro is not.
It's okay. I'll be here the rest of the call. So there's oh no, yeah, this might be, yeah, it's a weird time for someone with a small child. But yeah, I would just say feel free to chime in on those magicians threads. There hasn't been a ton of feedback from people that are just like, hey, I implement apps for a living. I would use this if you changed X. It's like user feedback would still be really timely if people have opinions or use cases or corner cases they want to mention in those threads. They're all still draft. They're all being prototyped. So yeah, and I'm here the rest of the call, so you can ping me in chat or something if you come up with a question later.
That would be great. Yeah, thanks, Bubble Fudge. I think that's the topic we have for today, and then we should be able to open up a general discussion. You can talk about the East debug. You can talk about the 5.4.3.7 related EIP questions raised by Bumblefudge. Or if you have other ERC related questions, you can sometimes people also raise questions about governance of EIPs. There's not enough voice from authors like you guys. So if you have any feedback about the governance or how EIP ERC draft editing works, I'd be happy to service back to the group. Go ahead, Fame.
Yes, I just like to say hello and put it out there that I work on the ENS project. And there's a lot of interesting issues in terms of making ENS multi-chain. And we're currently revamping a standard for reverse resolution, which will make it support multi-chain or many chains. Currently, we only have one reverse address and ENS on mainnet. And some people use it on other chains, but it can present a problem with smart accounts. So anyhow, there is an ENS IP process, and I just always put it out there that people, if they're interested in what's going on over there, it's fairly centralized right now. Basically, ENS Labs is kind of controlling it all. But I think just having more eyeballs on it and more people asking questions about it, it does affect the whole Ethereum space quite a bit as ENS becomes a bigger and bigger standard.
There's a question that Bumblefudge dropped. Is there a discussion thread on Snapshot about the multi-chain stuff, especially? You mean the ENS decision about the ENS?
Yeah, sorry, I meant, or I didn't mean Snapshot. I mean the discourse forum for the ENS DAO. I've seen proposals there before. Is there like a specific thread we should be following or something?
Yes, I have a thread that I started a while back. It hasn't been updated in a while, but I'll post it here in a second. And like I said, the process is quite centralized in the sense that drafts can be worked on in places that we don't know they're being worked on, but eventually there will be a public process, but getting the ideas out there is important. There's also the idea of that Griff Green proposed and worked on, which is the idea. I think you also worked on that, right? The idea of the chain ID 0. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that just merged a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Right. So there's that. So there's a bunch of things that are going on in relation to the idea that we're going to have multi-chain world, but we also have this smart contract problem where I can have the same address on layer 1 and on layer 2, and I don't control both of those addresses. So we need to reconcile that. But at the same time, we don't want people to have to sign, which if they have an EOA, it should sort of work the way we expect it to, even with this multi-chain world, both in making it easier for forward resolution and reverse resolution.
Prem, is this related to CCIP read, or is that a separate thing?
It's just forward resolution and reverse resolution.
Okay.
How does
the problem is when you're on a layer 2, when you reverse resolve, it's like we go to Uniswap, and Uniswap gets your address, but it wants to kind of know, like, what's your primary name? Like, who are you? But you could be someone different on Optimism versus someone different on Arbitrum.
So how do you read it from the second different chain, like layer 2? Do you use CCIP read at all? I assume it
yes, there will be CCIP read because we're going to have a primary registry on every account, and the reason why is because smart accounts can't send messages to layer 1. So basically, you're going to have a primary name registry on every single chain. Sorry, I think I said account. Every single chain, there's going to be a primary name registry so that smart accounts can register their primary names. And so therefore, you're going to resolve that through CCIP read. Except there could be a shortcut where there's a deterministic wallet address, contract address, and therefore that clients that know that deterministic address could shortcut the CCIP read if they didn't want to keep getting all that latency. They could just directly access the primary name registry on the chain.
That's good. Any comments?
I have a question. Why do we want this? We have
The problem we have now is that
we've seen multi-chain systems, but I've never seen a multi-chain application. Like, why do we want that?
the problem is that OptiScans right now, OptiScan or all these scanners, they don't label transactions with ENS names on layer 2s. And the reason why is because we have this problem of only having one namespace currently for what's called primary names. And primary name is basically like the
we only have
name.
one. It's a singleton. DNS is a singleton. Phone numbers are a singleton. I only have one phone number in the US, but it's qualified to the US. I mean, that's unless we're namespacing .ens.op. Like, why is this a good idea?
It's basically like an area code, yeah. So it is going to be a namespace for every single chain. Every chain is going to have their own namespace.
Oh, the ENS name is going to have a namespace. The name itself.
No, you have to think differently about it, because basically the main problem we face in reverse resolution is, okay, here's a wallet address that's presenting itself on a chain. So we know what chain it's on, and we know it's a wallet address. The wallet address is a single namespace because it's just a wallet address. Now we have these chains, so we can say, okay, in the context of this layer 2, what is the primary name of this wallet address? And there you have this reverse resolution, and that is actually naming the wallet address.
That's bad.
So the namespace is the wallet address, and the context is the chain.
I don't like that. Names are for humans. Computers don't use names. The fact that the computers can query the names is completely useless. Just like computers can query NFTs to see what their metadata is, doesn't matter. Metadata is for humans. It's metadata, right? Names are metadata. So when you meet somebody on the street, they're going to tell you their wallet address, and then you're going to be like, okay, should I query that on this network or that network? That's the wrong. Like, we shouldn't be thinking that way, right? So now when
it just happens to be necessary to make it work the way people expect it to work across multi-chains. Like the way it works on Ethereum right now, if you want that to work on multiple chains, you have to have a divided namespace for this primary names. It won't work.
I want to open Optimism and I want to get my ENS name on ENS. Like that doesn't make sense.
I know the problem is that smart accounts can have the same address on 2 different chains, but be controlled by 2 different people. So basically, let's say you deploy a safe across 2 blockchains, layer 2, layer 1, and let's say you share those 2 safes with your wife, and then you get divorced. All of a sudden, 2 people, separate people, entities can own those 2 wallet addresses, same address.
For reverse, just for reverse.
For reverse, yeah.
I mean, then it should just be called the reverse.op.ens.
That's exactly what it works, because you're going to be checking that it's going to be your wallet address, the chain ID .reverse, and this is the pseudo TLD, and that's the way the system's going to work. And basically, clients will be resolving that way.
Okay, sorry. So the name itself does have the qualifier in the name.
In the wallet address name, that's how it's resolved.
Yeah. All right, thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah. But there's also the idea of a default for EOAs. So that's where I'm trying to say that there's complexity that because people, if you have an EOA, you don't have this problem with the smart accounts. So then it's like, well, we really don't want to have to register our EOA on every single EVM, because that could be very tedious and gas expensive. So we should have some sort of default namespace. But then there's also the idea of default namespaces for different types of wallets, sort of grouping them together. And I know Bumblefudge probably knows a lot about that. The idea of these namespaces, different types of wallets. So there's complexity, and that's why I just pointed out there that all this stuff is being worked on currently. And anybody who's curious, one of my missions is to make the ENS IT process much more transparent, much more open source, democratic. And right now it's very centralized.
Thanks for sharing.
I just want to also bring. I just want to also make sure that notes comments on is being shared. Gene then says, question if there's time, does this current reverse registration work address contracts have reverse names?
Yeah, so for people that aren't familiar, like it's easy for an EOA to register a reverse name because EOAs can make transactions. But if you want a contract to have a reverse name, you have to have code in the contract that does somehow calls the reverse register and says, hey, I want this reverse name. for me. And
You need a
There's
contract
one
wallet,
hack
right?
there. There is a hack that's currently exists in ENS, but only on layer 1, and that is that there's an owner of the contract.
Oh,
The
that was
owner of
implemented.
that contract. Yes.
Oh yeah, I didn't follow.
It's a bit of a hack because it has to be. You still need to have the right format of the owner and all that stuff.
Yeah, right. Because that's like an application concern, owner as a term, right? But that's cool. Yeah, I know Nick had said that you were looking into that as an approach, and I didn't realize that went anywhere.
It's implemented. I think in the future the goal is to be able to have, mostly in the future, new contracts on new chains will be able to predict how they're going to grab register their primary name. But at the same time, this owner thing, of course, owner is not a standard yet. The Open Zeppelin doesn't use a standard, and there's a whole issue there. But so there's some complexity. All I'm really trying to say is there's complexity, but it will affect a lot of things. So that's why I try to break it up a little bit.
Yep. Cool.
Opens up. By opens up, you meant Francisco in this call, right?
Well, I talked about this in the past. I forget the standard, the owner standard. There's like one small difference between the actual owner standard and the Open Zeppelin implementation, and it never is going to be resolved. So.
I also think William here had a minimal ownership EIP.
Yeah, I made the minimal owner standard because even people weren't using the existing one.
Prem, on another topic, I'm curious how you plan to address the thing about making the ENS IP process more open. Like, what kinds of ideas do you have for that?
My current method is the guerrilla method. I just basically, and I've been stalking the ENS project for years, and so I just stalked the ENS project. I'm in touch with Nick. I can communicate with him anytime, Nick Johnson. But at the same time, to get them to change their process and make it more public, it just takes more people getting involved and caring about it. There is basically a process. It's creating a pull request against the existing docs, but the docs were updated to a new version. So now there's a whole issue of like some old docs that were retired have drafts that are pointed to have pull requests pointing to that. But even if you completed that pull request, then that wouldn't get integrated into the new docs, and there's just not a lot of meta work being done around that,
Yeah, thanks, Prem and Francisco. Also, Pedro 5 minutes ago says EIP 5003 will solve this. I think that's about the question how do you determine a contract has its owner. I'm not sure. 503.
It's actually a big problem. 5003 is a big problem because basically the way we want to identify EOAs is by saying that, okay, smart contract accounts can't sign messages. So if you have 50003, all of a sudden now they can become smart contracts again. They can have separate owners. So the whole thing gets messed up again. So it's complicated. That's really the main thing. It's complicated.
Yeah, 503 has a lot of implication. A lot of the contract are using does this address have code to determine whether they are EOA or not. And then if you consider, so there's EOA, there's a contract with code, and 503 can complicate that. But also with Nick's method, you can actually create a contract that actually no one owns, right? It could be an EOA, just that the address, the private key, nobody ever knows. So that I will categorize as a different one. So I think the most effective way to determine whether an address is an EOA is just by checking whether there's second transaction coming out from there, so someone is able to repeatedly sign signatures out of it. But yeah, 5003 would be good, but also it would have implications. So
yeah, we're going to require a signature to even register an EOA. So that seems to work now because smart contracts can't sign signatures.
Smart contract right now cannot sign signatures, but it can generate 1271, or it can accept it can define 1271 contracts, and then they can also make it even more complicated by 6066, which Jack is here and Francisco is here as well. It's all gonna be even more complicated with the 3074. Yeah. Any other topics? Any other? I think Bumbleflash also share a few links that you guys might want to read.
Those were just the owner. Someone mentioned the original, never adopted owner standard and the minimal standard. So I was just dropping links to confirm we were all talking about the same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it didn't our industry work very, very hard to get away from owner. Well, anyway, yeah. Any other comments before we move on to other topics or finish up this talk?
No, just saying thanks, Prem. I mean, I appreciate the busting open and putting the rails down so we can drive in and join the improvement party.
I just posted a link in the chat for this deep ENSIP 17 draft.
Wonderful.
That's not being observed by anyone.
Nice. Okay. I would also put that into our meeting notes so that you can follow on that. Anything else, Prem, on this topic?
No.
Okay. We have a few more minutes. I wanna quickly share something I wanna surface back. I think it's a time to resume the work about ERC 1202 voting standard. I think I started drafting this in 2018 when we still only have compound, MakerDAO, carbon votes. And then ever since then, I think in order to support voting, I've drafted endorsements and a bunch of others and ownership as well. I think it's gonna be an interesting topic, and then it would be nice if someone would be interested in co-working on this part. I think on one hand, we need to find a good enough scope. It needs to be as flexible as possible to support enough use cases, right? And then it needs to be backward compatible with the Bravo or a bunch of other widely adopted voting standards. That's why I've been waited for such a long time. I think with the 3074 coming up, and also with the capability of having more batch transactions, or with the blobs, you can kind of include votes on chain with much cheaper transactions. We can start to think about how to implement a better general voting standard, and maybe provide some reference implementation. So if anyone is interested in kind of working on this, I'd love to kind of call for collaboration and move this forward. So I think this group is a very high quality attention. I just want to be selfishly promoting this undone work. So,
well, let me ask you. So you're concerned about compatibility with other projects that allow voting. What about platforms? This is an interface, right? So it's not just about we want votes. It's we want to create wallets that allow you to vote your tokens in your wallet. The wallets today are abysmal. You can't even log into websites with wallets today. It barely works. NFTs barely works. You try to send an NFT, you're reading hex code in most of the wallets today. So wallets don't support anything. Are you prepared to create a new wallet? Are you prepared to create a marketplace that's compatible with this, that works with other people's tokens? Or are you just, you like reading hex? Well, yeah. So I just wanted to know, is this about your voting product, or are we making platforms here, or are we just selling products?
I think it's not about product nor platform. It's about how can we agree on the potential of functions or interfaces so that a contract can be implemented to conforming that interface, and then a wallet can determine whether, or a DApp can determine whether they want to make it easy to cast the vote by generating an ethers.js call or VM or W3JS call to this function with properly path payload of the function call, and then get results parsable, readable to user. I think that's I don't have a product. Unlike many project coming up and says, hey, we have a product and this is how we expose our interface, and that's why you should also follow us. I don't think that's the right way to drive a standard at this large scale. So I think it's more of like, let's come up and understand all existing use cases and what's your preference, what's your use case that need to be supported, and then how about we can conform to interface that wallets can build wallets, the app can build the apps, and contract builder can build contract builders. Some of them may want to make it compatible with snapshots, right? Even though snapshot does not go on chain right now, but maybe someone want to check in it would work, right? And if someone wants to use Merkle tree verticals to check in the roots and then have an optimistic tally of a vote, but also have some kind of roll up on in this contract, we can be able to support that as well. Like I think 6 years since we started this draft, many have changed and many new things have been built. I think this would be interesting time to begin talking about how can we have a conformed voting standards. So, all right. Yeah. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Victor.
Victor,
Yeah,
quick
thanks.
question. I just posted the 1202 on a DAO tooling discussion board. What's the best way to tell people to contact you if they're working on voting and want to, I don't know, email you or something? What's the best?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is actually comment on this no one cares FEM thread.
Cool.
And then resuming the work. And
Cool.
then yeah, whoever wants to come over and discuss this, we can start there. And then if you know any forums, any DAOs, any like Discord channels that you think we should go there, you can put it down, and so that I would love to kind of go each one and call people. And maybe down the road we should start a Discord, or we should start a mailing list, whatever. Like there needs to be some collaboration. I think this is going to be important. And if, by the way, Bumble Fudge, if you are interested, I'd love to get your wisdom, like leverage your wisdom, co-author, whatever way. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I would say if DAOs or people working on tooling, or like you said, if someone has some secret fork of Snapshot they're working on that works with their only on their roll up or whatever, that would be the ideal co-author, and I'm glad to edit once anyone's working on it. I think it's just one of those things where there's like a middle ground between here's my product, everyone use my interface, and designing a platform in advance with no products on it. Like I think the middle ground is like one co-author from each camp haggling.
Yeah, I think we need a kind of wisdom where Open Zeppelin and Solidity is able to make things so easy to adopt. And then the kind of wisdom when William was bring people like 5 projects of NFT together to come up with the 721. So there needs to be a lot of wisdom in how to make it adoptable and how to bring different implementation to the same. Yeah, so that's why, yeah, SDKs. I think we have a very good audience group today. Well, that's all I want to share here. I know that we're at time. Is it anything else people want to flag for awareness or anything? Well, if not, then thank you for attending AllERCDevs Season 2, Episode 3. Greatly appreciate G. Nick Dan and Bumble Fudge, and then all the great peer reviewers, especially William Mentrican, Francisco, Prem, Pedro, whoever engaged. Thank you so much, and Rick Moore, thank you for being here. Look forward to see you next time. And then, by the way, we look for presenter, reviewers, volunteers, please. Oh,
Great question.
Francisco, do you want to say something?
No, sorry, I was not.
Oh, you want to do emoji and then you press the raise hands, right? Happen to me all the time. All right, this is community to make ERC works, and then we know that it only works when there's adopters. So authors need to work with adopters. We believe this can be the Ethereum's IETF. So thank you for coming over. See you next time.